Okay, so today we're going to try and set up a potometer. The first thing we need to do is we're going to remove the potometer from the backboard, detach it from the clips. I'm going to take this syringe temporarily off so that we can put it underwater and remove as much air as possible. So the next step is to try and get as much air out as possible. We need to get all the air out really from these plastic tubes, these soft plastic tubes. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to squeeze as much as possible each end until the air bubbles keep escaping. Now this could take maybe a minute or two, and you can see the air bubbles popping out every time I squeeze it, which means that air is coming out. And we want this to be completely filled with water, not air. So I've done as much manual squeezing as possible, but you can still see I've got air bubbles in the setup. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to get the large syringe, and I'm going to attach the large syringe to this end, and we're going to try and suck out as much air as possible using the syringe. To do this, we need to make sure that the tap on our potometer tubing is set to the right position. You've got an off word on the long handle. That indicates that whichever side is linked with the off handle, that side will not draw air or liquid through it. So I can draw liquid through this tube here, and it will come out of here, but nothing is going to exit here. To change that, whenever you need to move air out of this side, we would have to manipulate this tap into a different direction to make sure that the other side is off. Just double check that when you're doing this underwater, because otherwise you won't be sucking any air out. So I'm going to put the big syringe into the base here, and I'm just going to start drawing out the air and the liquid, and you can see all the air bubbles are coming with it, hopefully. So I've just drawn the air bubbles out, and I'm going to just release the water all the way to the bottom, go underneath again, attach and start again. Okay, so now I've magically removed all the air from the system, I believe. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn the tap and make sure it's in the right position for our next step. Our next step is to push through the coloured dye into this left-hand side, this tubing here on my left-hand side. To do that, we're going to turn the tap so that the off position is facing the right-hand side, this right-hand side tube. And we keep everything underwater at all times. That's the most important thing about setting up a potometer. So now I've set it to off. I'm now going to take a syringe and I'm going to draw up the coloured dye. I'm going to fill the syringe all the way to the max level, and then I'm going to try and remove any air bubbles from the syringe and the dye under the water. So watch carefully. Okay, so I'm going to place the dye and the syringe underneath the water, and I'm going to try my best to just flick the syringe as much as possible and slowly push that plunger. There's an air bubble at the top, and this is why doctors do this, if you're wondering, if you ever see it in a medical program. They don't want any air in that syringe. So we're going to try and release that bubble. It's quite stubborn at the moment. We're going to just slowly push until we can get that air bubble out if possible. Okay, so now I've removed all the air bubbles in the dye. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to plug the syringe into the base of my potometer tube, and I want to push this dye through, and you should watch it flow to the left-hand side. And I'm going to keep pushing from the syringe until that dye comes out the end, and you can start to see it coming out the end of the potometer now, and I'm going to stop there. Okay, so I'm going to change the tap now to the off position facing the syringe. That means we're in the running position ready for the dye to flow through, so that when transpiration starts occurring we can measure the movement of the dye through the tube. Okay, so now we're ready to collect our leafy shoots. So we've got a bucket of leafy shoots over here. This is laurel. We're going to grab one of our shoots and we're going to make a diagonal cut with some secateurs. So please be really careful when using secateurs, they're extremely sharp. There's a safety catch on the secateurs that you need to release before you're ready to cut. And when you finish cutting, always put that safety latch back in place. That's really important. We're going to make this cut underwater because the entire system has to be airtight. That's the most important part about setting up a potometer. So we're going to put the chute underwater, and we're going to cut at a diagonal angle. We're aiming to cut around about 2 inches from the base of the chute, and we're going to cut diagonally across because that increases the surface area available and gives you the best option for transpiration to take place successfully. So we're going to take the chute, we're going to place it underwater. I'm going to release the catch on my secateurs, and I'm going to just take a diagonal cut and remove the excess chute. So I'm just going to put this into the rubber tubing, carefully push it up so it's nice and secure, and I'm going to grab some Vaseline, which is some petroleum jelly, nice and waterproof, and I'm just going to wrap that around the seal of the join. So we've now got the chute back in the clips, the whole potometer is ready to go. The last trick we've got is a little elastic band because the chute is quite big and we want to keep it in place. So we're going to place the chute on one of the clips at the top here. We're going to go round the back, around the front, sorry, of the plant. We're going to go round the back of the stand. And we're just going to attach it back there, and that will keep the chute in place, ready for you to start your transpiration experiments. One final thing to mention, if you find that the dye has gone down due to the transpiration effect already, we're just going to move the valve and ensure the off position is at the top, pointing towards the chute. And we're going to use this is our reservoir, and we're going to push gently the red dye, and you'll see, very slowly, that the dye is going to start filling the tube until it flows out the end. Last thing I need to do is move the off position back to the reservoir, and we're ready to start measuring our experiment.